Good afternoon and welcome to BizTech's Asian Midday Market Watch. Our guest today is Vishnu Varathan, Head of Economics and Strategy at Mizuho Bank. Vishnu, great to have you on the show this Monday.
Always good to be here on a Monday, Brian. Any day for that matter, but
Yes, always that smile to start the Monday and start the week. But first, this will bring some smiles on some people's face when we look at cryptocurrencies for a start, because Bitcoin is now at 51,683.6. It's up 3.7%. Now, Ethereum is at 3,915.99. It's up 1.14%. So I was just thinking and reflecting, and about a month ago, Ethereum was less than 2,000. So it's essentially doubled in the past month. Obviously, because it's going to be much more difficult to mine Ethereum. There are things happening with Ethereum that will happen in the next few months. But that's really fueled the surge in Ethereum. If you look at regional markets, we've got the Nikkei up almost 2% at one point, but now up 1.83% at 29,661.92. Shanghai Composite is at 3,618.31. It's up 1.02%. Hang Seng is at 26,034, up 0.51%. The ASX 200 is at 7,515, down 0.09%. The Kospi is also down 0.07% at 3,198. Closer to home, we've got Bursa Malaysia's FBM-KLCI is at 1,650.43. It's up marginally 0.01%. Rounding up the numbers, we've got the SGX Straits Times Index, which is at 3,092.75. It's up 0.29%. Vishnu, what's your view on how the markets have performed this morning?
it does look like by and large markets are slightly more buoyant, though not by a long shot, not evenly so, and certainly not with the same amount of conviction. And we must, I think, nuance the bigger picture brush strokes with the finer details. So the big brush stroke could be we've had either what appears to be now a half full glass of the NFP data. So the data coming out weak was taken to be a sense of the Fed keeping accommodation in for longer and maybe delaying taper. Of course, the more dovish ones have extended that even further, and I think that's the broad brush stroke of buoyancy in the markets. But there's some caution around that because US continuing to decelerate in terms of its recovery cannot be good for Asia in terms of the external drivers for our recovery in the region either. So this is a very, very balanced, delicate point. Where we see outperformance in the region more often than not. There are domestic factors. For example, Japan probably still feeling some of that political relief, perhaps political hopes, playing into the equities. And I think to some extent, markets are also quite cautious about what's going to happen in China, given we see signs of further tightening in the property market, and then at the increment, people questioning whether there's too much tightening too soon. And so these are the many factors at play. And I'll steal a line from you that you had before the show earlier. The headline masks a lot of things underneath it.
Now, the thing is, what surprised, I think, everyone, including amateurs, investors like myself, is how far the miss was on the non-farm payrolls. So the numbers came in at 235. Against expectations of 750,000 jobs, and their unemployment rate was 5.2%. So, Vishnu, how do you think that's going to impact the Fed when they meet later this month with regard to asset tapering?
Well, I think the Fed will have to weigh off a few factors. So one thing they need to look at is because they must accept that this is a bit of a bumpy process, and certainly it's not a smooth jobs outlook, given that they have a Delta scare, cases are on the rise. So they need to determine whether this is a sustained downtrend, in which case they probably will pull back a lot harder, or they think that the overall recovery will continue, albeit at a reduced momentum, in which case they can also allude to the fact that sooner rather than later, they've been knocking up against 90% of the COVID job losses already recovered. So at a 3-month average pace of about 750,000 jobs a month, by end of this year, they'll be very close, or beginning of next year, they'll be very close to having recovered 90% of the jobs, in which case they have met their own substantial progress. So
that's a good number.
But this is how I'll frame it. I'll frame it this way. I'll say markets are hopeful that they push it out as much as they can. But if the Fed were to bail on tapering, ironically, we may see markets capitulating further, at least initially, because of the fear of what the Fed sees in terms of downside risks that they have not. Because I think the Fed's point is a matter of timing, not a matter of whether they ought to taper.
Now, Vishnu, I want to swing your thoughts over to Thailand, because over the weekend, the country's prime minister and several other cabinet ministers survived a vote of no confidence. What's your thoughts on this, and what should investors in ASEAN be looking out for, particularly in Thailand?
Well, I think we probably need to do what economists do and qualify everything in the short run, in the medium term, and in the long run when we're all dead. So this is how we look at it. I think PM Prayuth surviving this no confidence vote with his cabinet intact mostly, that would, I think, translate into some parts of the markets getting some confidence about policy continuity, in particular the ability to extricate itself from the grasps of COVID with the vaccine rollout, so on and so forth. So you don't get distracted by politics or campaigns and things like that. And this can continue. So I think that's where the good news comes in. But I don't think anyone is distracted from the fact that the fractures are deep and the divide may be rather wide. And I think that's something that will come back to roost. And really the question then for investors is, how do they gauge political risks? Do they go back to the received wisdom about politics and the economy running on separate tracks? Or do they need to start to factor in that maybe it could be a risk to the economy as well?
Now, Vishnu, overall, what are the events and data points this week that you think that will move markets?
I think if we're segmenting up markets, certainly it's worth watching what the RBA says and does tomorrow. Just as a reminder, the RBA had flagged earlier that they would start tapering. So instead of buying bonds at 5 billion Aussie dollars per week, they're going to temper that down to 4 billion. Already been flagged. At the last meeting, some thought that they would rescind on it because of the lockdowns. They did not. They need to start this month. So I think markets will be watching whether they get cold feet or not on that. And that could give us a lot of information, not just about RBA's thinking, but also on the Aussie dollar. We also want to watch some of the regulatory developments in China, in particular for the property market and perhaps impact on commodity markets. Those are the things that ripple out further. Malaysia's central bank is also meeting. It'll be very interesting to see what the outlook is for 2022, not so much this year or Q4, but really the kind of recovery trajectory that's being projected, given that vaccination rates are expected to reach pretty high levels by early next year. So that's worth watching in terms of the BNM, even if they keep a dovish hold for now. It's really good to see what their outlook on growth is going to be. We get some CPI numbers here and there, nothing too earth-shattering. What we want to watch for the large FX markets is the ECB meeting. In case the ECB surprises on the hawkish side, which is not our base case, in case they do, and the euro goes higher, dollar shifts a lot lower, and we will have the illusion of stronger Asian currencies when it's really the dollar reacting to a stronger euro. Yeah. That's right.
Vishnu, thank you very much for your insights.
My pleasure, sir.
And have a good week ahead.
And you.
Now, we've been speaking to Vishnu Varathan, Head of Economics and Strategy at Mizuho Bank on BizTech's Asian Midday Market Watch. I'm Brian Fernandez. Please check out www.biztech.asia for business and technology conversations. Please like and subscribe our Facebook and LinkedIn pages as well. Thank you very much for tuning in.